and the program. So ultimately, when you surrender, so somebody will receive the interest, the cash. They will then utilize it as per a budget that was put out. Ultimately, when they surrender, because they have to surrender, okay? When they surrender, that gets journalized back into issues. So it's not like somebody received a gift and walked away. That is not true. They will receive the money, they will do the activities, they will then have to account for that money. When that surrender is done, it is then journalized and brought back into the IFME system. Okay? So I think we need to be very clear that interest systems are not gifts for people to walk away with. So that, number one, we need to disabuse that. But secondly, and most important, is that we have been able to set new procedures, and for the last 2 months we have not transferred into that account because we are working at ensuring that there is better hygiene into the system. Okay?
I have to ask.
So when they're accusing you, they're basically saying that, you are.
Thank you. That is the end of the first video. Can you perhaps briefly introduce the second video?
So the Chair and Committee, the second video is an interview that the Governor for Siaya County, Governor James Orengo, had with KTN, the TV station. And in one of his submissions, he mentioned that as a way of forestalling any potential litigations around, getting rid of employees whose contracts had not ended, he chose to take the negotiation route to ensure that he achieved his objective, but also avoided potential suits from employees whose contracts would have been shortened.
So when they're accusing you, they're basically saying that, you are not forming government and appointed as a or to be appointed. You are not then delivering on the promises that you have made. But then here you are, you're saying that you've got to balance between this and following due process. Yeah. And the other bit, which it's politics.
No, I have a mechanism, I put a mechanism in place where, these guys, they serve for a time. Like the county chief officer for finance, he had a contract running nearly to 2026. When we put these issues to him, he actually said, I am putting in my resignation and effective from April. No, I thought that was a better way. Instead of sacking him, he goes to court and the Auditor General, his concern was the termination of contract in accordance with the law. Because we've got two conflicting rulings that says when a county government signs a contract, it does not matter whether it was the old governor or the new governor. It's the government. It's the government. Just like we have a new administration nationally, they can run away from commitments made by the previous government.
Thank you very much, Governor. Governor, let us now get into your testimony proper. And I just want to start off by asking you, you are aware that you are now before this committee.
Point of order, Chair. I think whoever is before us is not the governor of Siaya, but the deputy governor. For the purposes of the record.
True. So address him as the deputy governor for Siaya, not the governor.
That was a slip of the tongue.
The governor is the one we have just seen on KTN.
Maybe I got carried away because I was listening intensely to what the governor was saying. My apologies to the committee for that. Deputy Governor, you are aware that you are before this committee of the Senate facing impeachment charges.
Yes.
Are you familiar with those charges?
Yes, I am.
All right. Now, have you responded to those charges? Have you put in a response?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Have you put in your written statement?
Yes, I have.
And is that statement supported by annexures, documents, exhibits?
Yes, it is.
Would you like to adopt those, or that statement, or the documents that you have filed in response to the impeachment charges?
Yes, I would like to adopt.
Okay. Now, in your own words, please respond to the impeachment charges, and please share with this committee what you would want them to hear from you in respect of the charges of impeachment.
Thank you. Chair and committee, just like my counsel has guided, I would like to adopt my witness statement in total. But I will also go through that witness statement that I submitted. I'll not go through it word by word. I will just summarize it in the interest of time. So my witness statement is marked DG2, and I had a bit of introduction on background, introduced myself, and I talked about our campaign and the tagline that was around good governance, transparency, and accountability. I also, in setting the pace and the background, mentioned in my witness statement that Governor James Orengo had delegated the overall supervision of the entire Department of Finance and Economic Planning to me. The governor further directed that the chief officer in charge of finance and economic planning, Mr. Jackson Odinga, would be giving me briefings on a weekly basis, or as such other time as would be required by myself from time to time. And I have an annexure there in my statement, annexure W01, and the document is DG4 on page 5. Now, for the first 3 months, we worked seamlessly with Governor Orengo, as I had alluded to yesterday. Towards the tail end of November, I started noticing some huge abnormal withdrawals. And I will not go to the details of the withdrawals. I'll just consolidate the withdrawals. We'll unpack them a little later. In the month of November, there was a withdrawal of 46 million Kenya shillings. In December, 41, and in January, over 20 million. So in record 3 months, Siaya County, through Impressed, had withdrawn a total in excess of 100 million. And the evidence I have adduced is in DG4, page 6 to 75, and we can look at that a little later during cross-examination. I want at this point to refer you back to the video that was shown a little earlier where the CECM for Finance and Economic Planning was talking about having withdrawn 65 million between November and the month of May. I think it is economical with information there, because on the same breath, it says that they froze the Impressed account in the month of April. So they could not have withdrawn from November to May, because April it was frozen, May it was frozen. So that 65 must have been from November to March. Chair and committee, upon noticing these huge withdrawals from the Impressed account, I summoned Mr. Jack Odinga to come and explain for me these withdrawals. And it was a little cagey, but eventually explained the nature and the reason for the withdrawals. And that the withdrawals were supposed to be financing government operations, which was really a political statement, government operations.
I raised the issue with the governor, and the governor declined knowledge of these withdrawals. And at that point, I did not pursue it further. And I knew that since I had already raised it, it was not going to be an issue anymore. Unfortunately, in the month of December, that position still obtained. In January, the same withdrawals continued. So, first, I felt a bit frustrated, Chair and Committee, because when I raised them with the Governor in November, I had expected some, sanctions, and that did not happen. So, in the month of February, I need to also give some background around my relationship with Governor. We had a fairly intimate, fairly close relationship the first 3 months. When I raised these issues in November, there was some level of disengagement. Noticed that that relationship we were drifting apart in December, and then in January, our communication had somewhat completely reduced. And then in February, Governor, without consulting me, as used to be the practice, and ignoring expert professional advice from his sh18M for finance and planning, because he had suggested names and persons that needed to be transferred to finance. And Governor completely ignored that, and I have shared with the committee the communication and the evidence. And, in one clean sweep, transferred 3 individuals back to finance. And these individuals were under investigation on account of the theft of the 600 million and 400 million. I noticed the previous speakers before me, the witnesses, no one has been talking about the 400 million. But Chair and Committee, indeed, the county of Siaya had the great misfortune of having lost 600 million and 400 million, besides the current graft in our administration. I also want to put pending bills. We had a pending bills committee, Chair and Committee, that was appointed by the Governor. I, in the cabinet meeting, was appointed the chair of the pending bills subcommittee. But I recused myself because I did not want to be painted with a corruption brush. There were a lot of politics around pending bills and a lot of undercurrents around pending bills. So I decided to recuse myself and asked the team, the rest of the team that was part of the pending bills, to nominate holding chair in my absence. And they did nominate the former sh18M for health, a gentleman called Dismas Wakla. They did an extremely good job, reviewed within Siaya County. We had a total of about 1 billion worth of pending bills before review and authentication. And after review, authentication, they came up with an approved list of 818 million. So that was the ballpark number that we always worked with. Then in March timeframe, Chair, the last cabinet meeting that I attended, there was a 176 million additional pending bill that was sneaked into the cabinet. And I protested, and I said that objected to internal audit. I thereafter, through a memo, which memo I have attached under WO5, DG4, page 88, I thereafter requested the county secretary to investigate how the additional 176 million worth of roads department pending bills found its way into the cabinet. Because 176 million, chair and committee, is not pocket change. That's a lot of money. No investigations were ever done, as per my request in the memo of 28th of April. And to date, Chair, I do not know the fate of the additional 176 million pending bill, additional pending bill. I was concerned, Chair, because this 176 had not been brought up to us as part of the pending bills that needed
Validation and authentication.
And then when I followed up with the finance minister, he mentioned to me that the minister for roads had withdrawn that particular pending bill. And Governor Orengo, who is has executive authority, I had copied him in both mails, and he did not reprimand, did not ask for explanations with regards to this particular suspicious.
Mr. Chair, I would wish to object to the reference to on what he may have done or not done, because he has no opportunity to come before this committee to speak as to what action the administration had done. We can see from what he's referring to that the department itself had withdrawn the alleged pending bills. So unless we had Governor Orengo before you today to tell you what actions he did, the witness should not be allowed to drag the governor's name in the proceedings.
And from the ruling that I gave yesterday, we said, please let's not mention Governor Orengo in our submissions. You can mention the office, but not, because the office of the governor is both you and him.
Okay.
I am Chairman.
Chair, with your kind permission, I think this matter is between the county assembly and the DG. I think we should really remain relevant to what his response is, what is going through. I think we just remain with what the case we have before us.
Yes, Timothy.
Chairman, the witness is giving context to what he believes is the genesis of these impeachment proceedings. And the witness is reporting a conversation he had with the governor. It is not anything that anybody else spoke to the governor about. He is reporting what he had with the governor.
Mr. Chairman, that amounts into, you know, it's not direct evidence. That's circumstantial evidence. It's a hearsay.
Chairman, yesterday, when Mr. Okwata or Jack Odinga wanted to give context of what discussions they had with the DG, Mr. Nyamodi protested and you ruled in his favor.
That is why I've just said yesterday, we said, please desist from, unless something that is written inside your submission, what you had properly with the Honorable Orengo, please, you withdraw and we are not going to take it up. I stand by what I ruled yesterday.
Chair, just to seek clarification from you, in my witness statement, which is before you and the rest of the committee members, I did make reference to this particular additional pending bills. If it pleases you, Chair, I probably need to refer then to the office of the governor and not the person of James Orengo.
And the CC Finance, because it's here. You remember the director, the chief officer finance was here yesterday as a witness.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's leave it beyond there, not beyond there. We should not go to the governor, please.
Very well.
The governor is not part of any subject here.
Very well. Chair, I want to also mention that once arrested, the 176 million additional pending bill, I was then subsequently excluded from cabinet meetings and haven't attended cabinet meetings since the 29th of March this year. And further, as I continue with my submission, I will be explaining the importance
Of that, Chair.
So towards February, mid-February, when Governor Rengo, well, the governor, I apologize, the governor made a reshuffle and returned people that were under investigation, I realized, and again, we were not talking. We had not talked from mid-January. So I realized that, you know, if I did not make enough noise, because I'd been discussing with him, I had been trying to handle it internally, because I'm part of executive. So from November, those huge withdrawals, I was in discussion with the governor and the finance team. December, still tried to find an amicable solution. January, same. But in February, when the governor made that unilateral decision to transfer people that were suspected to have stolen money and were under investigation, and transferred in mainstream finance, Chair. Now, the way finance works in county government, and specifically IFMIS, if you want to steal money in county government, place to focus on is treasury. So it's chief officer finance, director finance, head of treasury, head of IFMIS, cashier. That circuit, those 5 people are the people that interface with money at any point in time. So when the governor returned those people to those particular positions, I said this, I must now go out to the public and go back to my electorate, the people who elected us, and let them know what is going on. I did not want to wait 4 or 5 years, as is the practice with most of us politicians, and then start complaining. And then the electorate were going to ask, so why did it take you 4 or 5 years to talk about this? I wanted us to nip it in the bud so that we are able to seal the loopholes and focus on the service delivery to the people of Siaya County. So when I was out there in one of the funerals, I made a political statement around plunder and theft of public money in the executive. I was subsequently summoned. I was just laying the background. Subsequently summoned by the assembly. And Chair, committee, it would interest you to note that the gentleman that summoned, issued the first summon for the General Oversight Committee. The chair, the gentleman that issued that summon was the chair of the ad hoc committee for my impeachment, the Honorable Francis Otiato, and he was a witness here yesterday. And I will be explaining the importance of that in a little while.
Deputy Governor, is that summon part of your evidence?
Yes.
Could you please point to the committee to where that summon is to be found? W07?
W07, it's DG4, page 90 to 91. Okay.
Page 90 to 91?
Yes.
Where does the mover of the motion signature appear?
It appears It appears on page 91.
Thank you. And you confirm that it is signed by?
The Honorable Francis Otiato, MCA for Yimbo East.
Thank you. Please proceed.
On 23rd March, the Assembly of Siaya adopted the said motion, sponsored by Honorable Otiato, Chair. And I was then asked to appear. I was then invited to appear before the General Oversight Committee. And that invitation was made, and it is dated the 28th March of 2023. And you find it on page 92 and 93, DG4. So when I was invited by the General Oversight Committee, the committee, I initially protested as to the mandate of the Assembly to oversight me on personal political statements made in funerals. They insisted, and I obliged, and I then attended the General Oversight Committee on the 12th of April 2024. Now, when I was for that committee meeting chair, I had hoped that I was going to produce my give my oral evidence, as I also presented my written evidence. But that was declined by the Oversight Committee. I was asked to send my written evidence, which written evidence I submitted 2 days later on the 14th of April 2024. So once I did that, Chair, there are persons in finance and within executive that had mentioned adversely. I expected that they were going to make responses to the General Oversight. And after that, I had hoped that it was going to be only fair that the committee invited me to give comments to those responses or make rebuttals. But unfortunately, that did not happen. So the committee went ahead, reviewed the written evidence that I had submitted, reviewed without affording me the opportunity to go and explain or give rebuttals on the written evidence that the various officers within executive had submitted, and went ahead to prosecute this matter, chair and committee, make a determination, and even went ahead and made some 2 recommendations. Okay? And in those 2 recommendations that they made, chair and committee, there was no recommendation on my impeachment. But it would also interest you, chair and committee, to note that on the same day when the General Oversight Committee presented and adopted the report, that is the Honorable Gordon Onguro introduced an impeachment motion against me. So I received the impeachment motion on the 30th of March, dated 29th of May 2023. And when I reviewed the impeachment motion, chair and committee, the grounds and the particulars were similar, largely similar to the grounds and the particulars that related to the General Oversight.
Okay, you didn't receive on 29th of March, 29th of May.
Sorry, 29th of May. I'm guided there. I received it on 30th of May, but dated 29th of May. And the grounds were similar to the grounds that had been adduced by the General Oversight Committee. So I thought I needed to lay that background, and so I want to now talk about certain things that I thought were done that were a bit unfair to me. Number 1, Chair and Committee, was a violation of my constitutional right to a fair hearing by the County Assembly, and I think I have pronounced myself on that. And the motion, the motion of the 29th May, Chair, you can find on DG5, page 520 to 522.
And I want to say, as you look at the motion and you review the pages, I want to say that the impeachment motion by the County Assembly of Siaya forwarded to me was not accompanied with any evidence or the statements of any witnesses the Assembly intended to rely on. So the letter sent to me by the clerk of County Assembly of Siaya indicated that the Assembly intended to call 10 witnesses during the hearing scheduled for the 6th before the special committee. But I had not been supplied with witness statements or documents the said witnesses would rely on. So on the 31st of May, Chair Committee, I requested the Assembly to supply me with witness statements. And I have a letter marked DG5, 529 to 530, requesting the County Assembly to provide me with witness statements. On 2nd June, 2 days later, I was furnished with unsigned statements of only 6 witnesses out of 10. And the annexure is DG5, 531, dated 2nd June, from the clerk of the County Assembly. And further, in the said letter, the clerk indicated that the committee had also received a video clip of me addressing a funeral event in March 2023. Okay. So, on the 5th of June, Chair and Committee, before the hearing at the special committee, I wrote to the clerk of the County Assembly, bringing to his attention the fact that the 6 witnesses he had forwarded to me were unsigned, the statements, and that there was no documentary evidence. And then on the same day, at around 4 p.m., I received a letter the same day I received a letter from the clerk forwarding me signed witness statements, volumes and volumes, witness statements. And you can find that in DG5, 533 to 534. That's a letter from the clerk of the Assembly. So I requested the following day when we went to the Assembly, my counsel and I requested to be given more time to review the bundle of documents, but we were not afforded that opportunity. Okay. So during the hearing of the 6th Chair Committee, the County Assembly called 4 witnesses. And even during the cross-examination of those 4 witnesses, they made the brazen admission that they had not recorded any statements in respect of the motion for impeachment. So I wish to start by calling the witnesses who had not recorded any statements to testify. It was an apparent ambush, as I did not have their statements in advance to enable me respond effectively or to prepare for any cross-examination. The second aspect that I want to bring to your attention is a violation of my constitutional right by the County Assembly against the principle of double jeopardy. I briefly touched on it yesterday. So, in accordance with the motion, Chair, I was required to submit to the County Assembly my response to the issues raised in the motion together with any evidence. I appeared before the General Oversight despite my contestations. And I have also mentioned here, Chair, that the grounds for my impeachment were similar to the earlier grounds that had been, prosecuted, determined, and recommendation done on. I want to particularly talk about ground 4 of the motion for impeachment on misleading the public by giving false information. The particulars given in support of the said ground were all before the General Oversight Committee, which considered and made a determination with recommendations. Which recommendations? There were only 2 recommendations, and none was to institute impeachment motion against my person. I wish to state, Chair and Committee, that it is unfair and contrary to Article 50 of the Constitution for me to be called upon to respond to charges or allegations which were substantively considered by the General Oversight of the County Assembly and a determination on them already rendered and reported by the committee. The last one is the partiality and biasness of the County Assembly of Siaya. So the motion, I wish to state that the motion of my removal, Chair, by way of impeachment was a motion originated, and this is very important, originated by the County Assembly of Siaya itself, which motion was prosecuted by the County Assembly. It was heard by the County Assembly, and it was determined by the same County Assembly. In essence, the County Assembly of Siaya was the complainant, it was my accuser, was the prosecutor, and the jury on my impeachment from the office. The accuser, prosecutor, and the jury. The motion of impeachment, Mr. Chair, and committee members, was brought by Honorable Governor Oduol, the MCA for East Assembly. The motion was adopted on the 29th May by a special sitting where they agreed to appoint a special committee comprising of 1/3 of members in the House. The hearing, Chair and Committee, before the special committee was made on the 6th of June. And during this hearing, this is the interesting part about this. The owner of this motion, Honorable Governor Oduol, did not appear before the special committee to prosecute his motion. He was not there. I further wish to state the mover of the motion, Honorable Oduol, did not appear to testify before the special committee or lay the basis for his motion of impeachment. He did not call any witnesses to testify before the committee. The mover of the motion, Honorable Oduol, as a consequence, Chair and committee abandoned his motion to be prosecuted by the special committee, which was supposed to be an independent arbiter, an impartial judge. Further, Chair, the mover of the motion was not available in the county assembly during the hearing to cross-examine me. Instead, I was subjected to intense cross-examination by the members of the committee. I further wish, and this is confirming the aspect of partiality and biasness by the County Assembly, and this is very important. I further wish to state that the members of the County Assembly were and continue, very important, were and continue being paid huge allowances, and I will demonstrate, of varying amounts every month by the executive of Siaya County. This is not only an apparent violation of the law, but also a demonstration the Assembly is in bed with the executive of the Siaya County government. And I have annexures there, chair and committee, to evidence to confirm what I am adducing before you here. And I invite you to look at DG 5, 535 to 562. I remember in the earlier days when this started, and this started sometime in November, I protested to the governor, and I had hoped that this was going to reduce or stop completely, because it's a breach of law. The Control of Budget PFM Act does not envisage something like this. The County Assembly of Siaya is independent. Yes, interdependent, but autonomous when it comes to fiduciary relationships and financial management. In explaining further why I felt, Chair, that the County Assembly could not have looked at my case independently, I complained about my exclusion from cabinet and the withdrawal of my privileges to the county secretary and the governor, while letters I wrote on diverse dates, and I copied the speaker and the chair of governance committee in the assembly of Siaya. And you can see, check that on DG 5, 563 to 570. The speaker did not take any steps to investigate the matter through relevant committees of the assembly, or did not summon concerned to address complaints. Chair and committee members, I did have privileges when I joined the County of Siaya as Deputy Governor. Those privileges were not unique to me. There are privileges that have been extended to previous holders of this office. The previous two deputies, they had a utility car with county reinforced security, which privileges were extended to me when I joined the county government of Siaya. But when I started making noise about misappropriation and maladministration towards the end of February, Governor, again, using his powers, withdrew those privileges. And I also mentioned earlier that I'd been excluded from cabinet meetings. I expected the assembly, as a body responsible for oversight, when I wrote those letters, I copied them. I expected them, at the minimum, to summon officers to seek explanations as to why they were doing those things. I want to put for the record, Chair and Committee, that I feel, and my considered view is our Assembly and our Executive is emasculated. The Assembly is emasculated by the Executive because of the allowances, and I will be explaining that they are receiving from Executive on a monthly basis. Honorable Tiato yesterday attempted to explain that they received those allowances on account of some joint meetings. But I will be explaining that a little later. So I want to now go to my substantive response to the grounds and allegations in the motion of impeachment, having laid the background and also raised some preliminary issues, Chair. So allegation number one.
You can proceed. You can proceed, yeah.
Thank you. So allegation number one is on gross violation of the Constitution and other laws by interference with procurement process through acts of bid rigging. That's allegation number one. And they go on and say that I interfered with the procurement of contractors for various road projects in the county and supply of delivery of certified seeds and fertilizer contrary to provisions of Section 47. Now, the operative word there, Chair and Committee, is that I interfered with the procurement of contractors. Now, if I listen carefully, and I will be explaining and showing evidence. If I listened carefully yesterday to the Director of Procurement, on the matter of seeds and fertilizer, he said that I attempted to interfere. On the matter of, and by the way, there was no evidence presented by the Director of Procurement or any of the witnesses that was asked to come before you, Chair and Committee. I wish to state from the onset that I was accused with the interference of procurement of contractors of various roads in the county and the supply and delivery of certified seeds and fertilizer. However, Chair, the particulars of the said tenders in terms of tender references, numbers, and dates of those tenders which I allegedly interfered with were never disclosed to me. And even copies of the said tenders were never produced before the special committee that had the impeachment motion. They were not presented to the Senate. They were not presented in Siaya during the hearing, and they were not presented to me. Mr. Martin Okwata admitted during cross-examination that he did not produce any document I interfered with. And that's important to note. And you can find that on page 29 of the Hansard report of 6th June. Those documents were never produced before the County Assembly as proof that I altered or interfered with the tendering process. The other ground is that the Deputy Governor coerced the head of County Procurement Unit to give him raw evaluation reports for the tenders. The other ground is that I unjustifiably, relying on the authority of the office, I really do not know what that means, the authority of the office of the Deputy Governor caused to be changed by coercion certain specifications in 86 tender documents for road constructions. Okwata was here yesterday, and he was on record that the tender specifications were never changed. So this is not true. By engaging in actions explained herein, William Oduol, being not a procurement professional with qualification recognized in Kenya, acted ultra-vires the provisions of procurement laws. Those were the grounds, the grounds on gross violation of the Constitution and other laws. Now, in any event and without prejudice, Chair and the committee, Martin Okwata works in the Department of Finance and Economic Planning. Governor had delegated the responsibility of superintending of finance and economic planning. And so as a consequence, if I asked Okwata for briefing, I think, and frequent briefings, that would be in order. So the Governor Rengo, I remember, and by the way, I just need to point out that if you look at DG4, there's a letter, page 5, DG4, that was given to Jackton Odinga, appointing him as acting chief officer, finance, and letting him know, besides reporting into the CECM for finance, he was also obligated to give me weekly briefings or briefings as frequently as I needed them. With regards to tendering process for seeds and fertilizer, Chair, I only summoned Martin Okwata after I saw a publication on Weekly Citizen newspaper where the image and the county of Siaya County had been tarnished. So I invited him to my office and I asked him to explain to me